Well, a pleasant good morning, sports fans, and welcome to another edition of the PR Man and the Coach Talking Ball on the Ballfather Podcast presented by Sportskeeda. I'm Reggie Roberts, your host, longtime NFL communications executive, and today we're joined by our Major League Baseball guru, correspondent, one of my best buds, Chris Domino. What's up, Big Chris? How you doing, man?
It's all good, Reg. Listen, we're on the countdown. About 2 weeks to opening day. They're playing games. World Baseball Classic has made spring training a little bit more interesting as to who went, who they're representing, and all those things. So it almost doesn't feel like what it feels like a lot of years. God, 7 weeks is so long. I think the World Baseball Classic, whatever your feelings about it might be and how important it is, it does make spring training better in years that it's going on as opposed to not.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's been really interesting, especially, it's sort of a side story to what's going on with the camp, following the camps for the first 2 weeks. And then guys are kind of leaving camp. They're going to play for the native team, Nicaragua, Puerto Rico. The Mexican team we'll get to here a little bit, who kind of thumped the U.S. A couple of nights ago. I think it's been a very, very nice distraction. A lot of players that I didn't really know who were playing, who were big league players until you sort of say, oh, I know that guy. He plays on this team. Because he's now playing on his national team, but I think it's given Major League Baseball specifically in the springtime a little bit more notoriety going into the regular season in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and for old guys like me, when I see Ernie Witt coaching a Canadian team, he's been the only coach they've had in 5 World Baseball Classics. I remember Ernie Witt, the player. Bruce Bochy is coaching in the World Baseball. So there are things that I just look around and go, okay, this is kind of cool. And then there are older guys who've really had their day, but because it's Italy or England, they still get a chance to play, put on another uniform. It matters. You certainly see by some fan bases showing up at some of these games that it certainly matters to certain fan bases. So yeah, I'm not sure the import of it leading up to it. Once I see the games and once I see and I hear, and I know Mark DeRosa really well and Brian McCann, and I know those guys are so psyched to go do this that all of a sudden I found myself with a renewed enthusiasm once they said play ball.
Yeah, it's been really, really interesting. It was interesting. Last night I was kind of watching a little bit of the U.S. Canadian game, U.S. Canada game last night. The U.S. guys actually got back on track with the 12-1 beatdown of Canada. Tim Anderson had a pretty decent game. His teammate, what's the guy's name? Lance Lynn, the pitcher, had with 5 strong innings. And Mike Trout, hit a ball that's probably still traveling in Chase Village. He hit a rocket.
I don't feel bad for guys very often, but they put a 19-year-old, speaking of Ernie Witt, he had a 19-year-old on the mound last night. And as the great Nick Saban once says, it was like, through a tin goose. Because it was not going to work for that young man last night.
No. I mean, the U.S. guys, were a little embarrassed for that 11-5 beatdown they suffered against Mexico. And I think they wanted to make a little bit of an example and come out and kind of play loose. And, you face the first 4 guys that the guy faces with Mookie Betts and what's the guy's name from former Colorado guy?
Nolan Arenado.
Him, and then Goldschmidt from the Cardinals. Yeah. And come on.
Reg, I think that kid had a little bit of pee running down his leg. And, that's what can happen sometimes. Great experience. You get to tell your grandchildren about it. He wished his manager didn't have to come out in the middle of the inning and take the baseball from him. But it is something to learn from. And there is this idea that at 19, he was going to be overmatched. But it's a story to tell somewhere down the road, especially if a major league career works out well for him.
I just got a note here. The first 4 guys that he faced been to the All-Star game 30 times.
Yeah. So let's just say it was a mismatch. They were fighting out of weight class last night, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of weight class, there's an 18, 19, 20-year-old guy down in Tampa playing with the Yankees who's supposed to be their shortstop of the future. And there's all this talk about, the guy we're talking about obviously is Anthony Volpe. Been a homegrown guy from Jersey. He's turning heads in camp, and there's this whole big debate now about whether or not the guy should go north in 2 weeks when the Yankees go back up to New York and start the regular season. I'm an old guy like you. You and I talk about it all the time. We used to go out and hang out in bars up in my office and stuff. I'm an old guy. I'm thinking that he should sort of, maybe start the season in AAA and sort of, so he won't be overmatched. Because right now he's facing guys, first couple of innings, he's facing guys that are probably going to be in the show. And then, towards as the game gets going a little bit, he's facing guys who are going to be working at Publix next week or 2 weeks. So, you're the baseball expert, Chris. What do you think? What do you think of the kid, and what do you think Boone does as they have to make decisions about who's going to go where in the organization?
Yeah. So here's the good news: if you're going to be ranked as a number one type prospect, go to spring training and look like a number one type prospect. Check the box, no doubt about it. They didn't think this was going to happen. Oswaldo Oswald Peraza, and then Gleyber Torres is a second baseman, but they've been rotating guys around to get guys at bats and see them at different positions. Here's what I believe. I'm not a big believer in maybe pitching a little bit more than hitters, but if getting out because you were too young to handle this, if that screws you up long term, you weren't a number one type prospect anyway. If it doesn't go well, but mentally you can't get over getting kicked in the teeth for the first time in your life, and I'm not saying it's easy. It's easier for some guys than others. Some guys can put it in their back pocket. But if you can't get over getting your teeth kicked in for the first time, you're not a number one type prospect. You're a guy who put up some numbers and then you got elevated through the system and then reality kicked in. If this guy is really as good as everybody tells me, and I'm very honest, I don't follow a lot of minor league stuff. I don't believe 98.7% of the people that I read when they talk about who's doing what and why in the minor leagues. And Reg, the big thing used to be they didn't want to start the clock to arbitration, so they would hold guys down. And guys have actually gone after baseball. It happened with the Cubs a number of years ago. It happened with a few teams over the last few years. What's different now is, and it came into play last year, Spencer Strider and Michael Harris II, who I see every day here in Atlanta.
Right.
There's now a pool of money. Michael Harris winning the Rookie of the Year, Spencer Strider winning Rookie of the Year last year was going to give them as much money, more money actually, than they made in salary last year. So there's a pool for finishing in the top three of these categories when you're pre-arbitration, less than 2 years in. So teams don't worry about it as much anymore. If I got a guy who can help me win games, especially in a place like New York, he's going to be up to help me win games. This concept of we keep him down for 28 days, and then we stall the clock, doesn't matter. You got 6 years. If you can't either do an extended deal or figure out that he's not your guy in 6 years, 5 years going into that 6th year, you're not a very good organization anyway. So if he can play and help, I'm bringing him up, because especially in a place like, look, in New York, if they were as good as everybody thought they were going to be, I could keep him down, and he might play in a place like Kansas City to excite the fans. Yankees haven't won a World Series in a long time. If this guy's going to help them get to that point, you bring him up now and play him.
Let me ask you this question. I mean, spring training games, like you mentioned this at the beginning of your last answer, teams are doing a whole lot of things. They're playing guys in different spots. They're letting guys pitch who've come off injury. They're trying to get. It's like a try. It's like a Hollywood try. The guys are doing a whole lot of different things. Is it fool's gold to see him hit the way he's hitting? It's not fool's gold. Okay.
No, because again, it just means he came into camp with the right mindset. He's physically, obviously, he's very gifted. Mentally is always the question. When you're told you don't have a chance, what do you do about it? Everybody's trying to avoid the backfields. That's where they send the minor leaguers, the guys who aren't going to come up. Most teams don't have spots. In all honesty, most teams going into camp with 24 of their 26 spots already slotted. Is there a reliever? Is there going to be somebody hurt? A guy that's not going to be able to go in April, especially on the pitching side? Yeah, that's how you actually fill out the roster. There have been years where you go look at the roster April 1st compared to the roster October 1st for a playoff team. You're going to see a lot of different names. Right. You don't survive with just 26. You don't survive with just 30. You don't survive with 35. You've got to be, and I'm not a big minor league guy, as I said. I'd rather trade a prospect for a parade. You can have my prospects. I need givens. Certain teams, again, dependent upon their payroll, dependent upon where they're supposed to be, see Kansas City, see Pittsburgh. If they're not supposed to be in it, they get to play around a little bit more. These teams that are good don't. They really have 24, 25 spots. A guy like Kevin Pillar here in Atlanta, 34-year-old guy, was maybe the best defensive outfielder in baseball for a 3 or 4 year stretch. He was supposed to play for Team Israel, but he realized he can't go do that as much as he wanted to, and he did. He's trying to make the Atlanta Braves because he's on a minor league deal. That's one of those 2 spots that might be available. Those are the types of guys that you find out, do I want a veteran or a 22-year-old? because of the money, you'd say 22-year-old, except if the 34-year-old veteran's on a minor league deal where he's not breaking your bank even if he makes it, and you get a veteran presence on top of everything else.
From a coaching perspective, we're going to ask one more about this guy. We'll move on to the next topic. Let me ask you this. Let's say the guy goes up there and then the baseball starts doing stuff that it's not doing right now. Okay. The guys are putting a little spin on it. They're doing, in other words, he starts out 1 for 40. Okay.
Oh.
What do you do? How do you fix that? And how do you sort of coach him through that?
I sit him down and I make sure he's not near a very, very tall building, because 1 for 40 is one of those where you go, I kind of like myself, but boy, this is not going very well. I don't think it would ever get to that point. But I understand what you're asking. I'm willing to let a guy learn on the job. Okay. Learn how to be a major leaguer. Is there a veteran there? Aaron Judge. Let's just say it's Judge, Josh Donaldson. And Aaron Judge and Donaldson are 2 different cats. But maybe you glean something from both guys, and it pays to be around veterans at that point. You will gain something even if you don't hit well. For me, the big thing would be if a shortstop takes a 1 for 14 out in the field and he can't make the everyday play. If you're goofed up where you can't play defensively, now I have a real problem. Until I see both of those really going wonky, I just think it's a guy who's trying to learn on the job. And again, if I'm good enough around him, I'm willing to let a guy learn on the job a little bit more.
It's really good insight, Chris. I appreciate that. Thanks, man. Well, let's move on. We talked about the World Baseball Classic. Juan Soto seems to have kind of gotten in a little bit of a groove where he's played. I mean, is there anybody that's more talented in the National League than he is? I mean, seriously, I mean, player for player, as far as can do it all, can hit, can throw, can hit grabs, can hit it up. I mean, he is ridiculously gifted.
Yeah, he's a freak. So here's what happens with guys like that. Where's my Juan Soto? That's what teams look around and go, well, there aren't many of them to begin with. And having success at 20, as we just talked about with a guy like Volpe or anybody else, it's hard to have success for a period of time, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, to be 23 and be that talented. He's going to hit the mother load, whether it's in San Diego or not. That contract's going to start with a 4, and his agent might ask for 5, and then we'll go from there. I don't know. Is he willing to do a 13-year deal with no opt-outs or limited opt-outs and take $500 million? He turned down 300 already, 300 plus. So, arrow up. I don't think he's making any less than 350. And I do think if it's a good year for him, he goes over 400, which would put him in the territory of Mike Trout. Now, the big one is going to be Ohtani. It's crazy. The guy hasn't one at-bat. He hasn't thrown one pitch in 2023 that really matters. And now $500 million is being thrown around from him. And people go, well, that's crazy. But is it? $50 million a year. If 2 pitchers are making $43 million a year, see Verlander, see Scherzer, Ohtani, if you get his bat, why is he not, in relative terms, a $50 million a year player? So it's already getting crazy with his conversation. Soto is sort of back burner. It's crazy that you can be Juan Soto and be the second most important guy coming up to free agency. Shohei Ohtani is the freak of freaks. He might as well walk out with a unicorn horn on his head.
He really is. It's insane. I mean, for people who don't follow baseball as much as you and I follow it, and here's a guy who's got a legitimate 92, 93, 94 mile an hour fastball and takes the ball once every 5 days for the Angels. And then he also can hit, 35, 40 home runs in the field. It's insane.
He's Bryce Harper, who got a $300 million deal. And pitching-wise, I don't know, somebody brought up a comp like Zach Wheeler, who signed in Philadelphia for over $100 million. So the money really does add up. Here's your cautionary tale. If the elbow goes, I lose both versions of him.
Right.
That's the thing.
Right.
The risk is, and I believe this, whether it's God's will or whether you only have a certain number of pitches or something happens on a given night where it goes like that in terms of an elbow, I lose both versions of him. So the good news is you can get some of it insured because he doesn't have pre-existing conditions, but you're going to be looking around going, oh my God, not only my best player, but the guy that I can't replace. Literally there's no replacing him in a trade or anything else. All of a sudden you go, oh, you are not only a lesser team, but you're probably not going to have as much financial flexibility unless you're Steve Cohen in the Mets as you would want or need.
It's absolutely I just thought about that. I'm just thinking about it. I mean, I'm still kind of just stunned by the thought of, you're right. If his elbow goes, you're right. You lose both.
Yeah. That's gone for a year plus. And then the question is, do I rehab him to be a pitcher
Right.
Or do I rehab him kind of as a pitcher? Then I've got to figure out what's most valuable. Because Bryce Harper, who had the elbow, he played through it for a long period of time, couldn't play in the outfield because he couldn't throw. They expect him back at the All-Star break. That's not what would happen if he was a pitcher. So Ohtani could come back as a hitter sooner if, God forbid, that happens. But being a pitcher and trying to get your workouts in would be a little bit different for anybody at that point.
You're the PR man, the coach, talking ball on the Ballfather Podcast presented by Sports Kita. Talking about guys who could get hurt. A guy who's kind of a big deal, and I kind of follow because the Yankees play in the same division with Tampa Bay is Ryan Glasnow, who might miss the start season with an oblique injury.
Yeah.
What do you think about him? And they talking about a dominant guy. Pitches from the left side, throws the ball with his left hand. I mean, he's been a dominant guy the last 3 years, and they can't afford to not about him.
Yeah, they're that team that, look, if Tampa calls you and wants one of your guys, hang up the phone because they know your guy better than you, and that's a bad sign. They've done it, I don't want to say smoke and mirrors because you can't do it for that long. They do it without payroll, but they can't lose a guy like this. The good news is over the last couple of days, they said it looks like it's calmed down. So hopefully, look, obliques, you know this just even from the football world. Groins, obliques, hamstrings. If you tell me this date a guy will be back, I'll believe it when I see it because I don't believe those are the three things: groin, hamstring, and oblique. Yeah, I don't buy anything.
Yeah,
unless you have Mr. Miyagi on your staff.
Yeah, you don't know. Yeah, one of the best trainers that I've ever worked with is a guy named Todd Torricelli, who was with us in Tampa. I used to call him the medicine man because there'd be guys, Chris, who couldn't walk when we ended a game. And then, you'd see the guy on Tuesday. He's in the room. He's got in the ice bag thing where it's like an ice suit. Looks like the Mr. Michelin man. He's in that thing and he's walking around. He's not doing interviews. Media asked me where he is, and I'd run in there and go see Todd just before I went home that day. Todd looked at me. He's about this tall, muscled up guy. He said he'll be playing Sunday. I promise you. And then all of a sudden, and nobody sees the guy for like 48 hours. And then all of a sudden Friday, he comes out and he's running full speed on the side. Todd's a guy. Todd's whatever it is, hamstring or whether it was an oblique or whatever, he could fix the guy. I don't know if baseball has guys like that. Maybe they do, maybe they don't.
Yeah, you know what it is, Reg? You can't take shots for things like that.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit different. Some guys are shaman. Look, the good news is guys don't heal at the same pace.
Correct.
Some guys will be a little bit slower, whether it's age or something else. Some guys are just freaky. One guy's pulled hamstrings, another guy's I'm fine. It's a tricky thing. The oblique, though, again, the oblique, hamstring, groin, when somebody tells me it's day to day or we'll see him in 3 days, I don't believe any of it until I actually see the guy out on a field.
Yeah. What's going on with your Braves? I mean, they've had a pretty decent. I don't think they haven't. I think they've aborted the injury bug. If I'm correct on that, just for spring training. How they doing?
Yeah, Mike Soroka was banged up. So Kyle Wright and Mike Soroka are the ones that have slowed down. Soroka's the guy, Michael Soroka. He wants to be known as Michael now, and I like him a lot. He's as rootable as anybody I've been around. Right. Achilles twice, but right before he went to camp, he pulled a hamstring a little bit, so he's behind. And Kyle Wright took a shot. He got shot. So he's a little bit behind. They're hoping for the second series. They want to get him 3 starts down in spring training as opposed to the 5 he would have had, maybe 6. And they think that will get him ready for the second series. So it's 2 pitchers. The 5th spot is open. Ian Anderson, good postseason, not a good regular season last year. Bryce Elder's another guy who's competing for that. Pretty healthy in the bullpen. So that's not really a thing. The big questions around here is Marcell Ozuna. Is he ever going to hit again? Eddie Rosario, we joke on the air here in Atlanta, he got new eyes. He didn't. He really had eye surgery on one. But we just find it funny to say he's got new eyes. And then the shortstop, Vaughn Grissom, who I had a chance to speak with yesterday, they kept him away from the media a little bit, halfway on purpose because he's fighting for the job. He's competed well. He's made every play he's supposed to make. He's going to be the starting shortstop for the Braves.
Yeah, but how about who he's replacing? He's replacing an icon, guy who's an icon in Atlanta. Popular guy, homegrown guy. I mean, how hard is that for him?
I think, look, here was what was harder for him. He played second base last year because Ozzie Albies was hurt. Then he got sat down because all of a sudden he wasn't hitting. He's not as natural a shortstop as some people want you to believe. He's athletic. My God, the kid looks like he was picked up, drawn out of central casting. Footwork had to get better. Charging the ball had to get a little bit better. And he doesn't have a big arm. But with their Ron Washington's a veteran guy down here, 70 plus.
Sure.
He's the infield whisperer. So Vaughn Grissom went 3 different times to New Orleans, to Ron's hometown, to work with him for a number of days in a row. And the big thing was, okay, you don't have to have the biggest arm to play shortstop. You got to get to it quick and get it out of your glove quick. We can make up for that. Let's make the bang, bang play. But the first thing you have to do is put yourself in a position to make every play you're supposed to make. I can hit him 90. You know, if he makes every play, turns every double play, if it looks like he can get the bang, bang play enough times, I can live with that. If he hits on top of that, all I'm picking up is extra. And he's athletic enough to sort of, as a 9-hole hitter in baseball, some guys are actually the second leadoff hitter. I don't want to go that far with him, but if he gets on base with the guys they have hitting behind him, there's a good chance he's going to be productive by scoring runs.
If Ron Washington can't get him done, it can't get him going, nobody can.
There's that funniest, listen, I don't know if anybody out here has seen Moneyball or not, but there's a scene where they go to Scott Hatteberg's house. It's Hollywoodized a little bit. And then Billy Bean, Brad Pitt's character, looks at him and goes, it's not difficult. Tell him, Ron. Ron Washington looks at him and goes, oh, it's difficult to try to turn a guy into anything. A catcher to a first baseman, a shortstop to get him better. Ron Washington is one of the funniest people. He don't care about smoking a heater. I had breakfast with him one morning. And when I say I had breakfast with him, we taped something. And then we went to a table outside. And he was bringing me food that I didn't really want. But at a certain point, he got so excited, eggs were flying out of his mouth. Because he's one of those guys, man, that brings it every day.
I love him. I got to meet him. I think we were spring. When I was working at Disney, we were at spring training, and I was there with I don't know if you know the guy, said Tony Wiley, longtime PR man for the Redskins. He was there visiting his family, and I brought him down. He wanted to go see Ron, and I brought him down to the Braves dugout. Ron was in it. I had the heater going, he's talking baseball and he's telling stories. I mean, you talk about one of the funniest human beings.
Reg, I had eggs flying past my head. He was so animated, angry about a couple of things with young guys in spring training and backfields. He told me a story. There was a morning 2 days before that where he told everybody, you're disgracing my field. Like, he's got a backfield that's, everybody just calls it Wash's Field. He told everybody to get off. He said they all started basically crying to me saying, I'm sorry, can we go back and do it again? He's a piece of awesome. Egg. Oh, he's tremendous. Funny.
Well, listen, I don't envy the kid Grissom who's having to replace Dansby. I mean, I saw Dansby the other day. They're saying everybody loves him in Chicago, and he's already made it. He's a hit there. Everybody loves him. I mean, the two things the Braves did in the last 2 years kind of still piss me off. I mean, how do you say goodbye to Freddie Freeman, and how do you say goodbye to Dansby Swanson? I mean, I understand it's economics and stuff, but I just think with those two guys, you got to figure out and find a way to make it work.
I think jury is still out on that. Listen, I understand, because Freddie especially, I knew Freddie at 19 years old. Dansby, the minute he was walking up to the major leagues, got to know him and his family. So there's that personal part of it. But I trust Alex Anthopoulos enough because he's got a track record of I'm supposed to trust him. And when it comes to stuff like that, it's what we all do. I work in sports talk radio. If it's not a fiery opinion, what the hell are you doing in the job? Although people do talk about stuff that I have no idea about, which still makes me laugh as a 60-year-old. But I for Dansby, if the difference was truly $65 million, $70 million, you go to Chicago. It's interesting. The Cubs they went on a nice streak in spring training, but Dansby's not hitting. But people are talking about the presence he brings in, the work ethic and everything else. I think he's going to be fine. Freddie has now resigned himself to being there in Los Angeles. It's funny to see him in Team Canada. I don't know if you know the story. When his mom passed away, everybody's like, why isn't Freddie playing for Team America? Well, he's playing for Team Canada because it's something he's doing to honor his mom. So I always think that those stories are great. He was on the wrong end of it last night. It was a whooping, as a matter of fact. But I know he's extremely proud to be wearing that uniform for multiple reasons.
just a great guy, great community guy, great family, commercials with the kid. He was. I was really, really, really disappointed when the Braves didn't keep him. I really was.
Yeah, that was a two-way street, though. That was Freddie and his people plus the Braves, and it was sort of one of those where you just passed. The ships just went like this instead of colliding. I'll give you one more, Reg. Not signing Dansby, more than the Freddie money because you gave it to Matt Olson. That might be Max Fried money because that's the one that everybody keeps waiting for. He's the one guy that hasn't gotten extended. Right. Hell of a pitcher, hell of a year last year, but. Yeah, I think they were a little bit nervous of going long-term with a guy who's going to be 30, 31 hitting a free agency. They're going to let him play it out. And he's willing to let it play out because that's his personality too.
Yeah. I was there last year, snuck in Atlanta for a couple of days just for take care of some stuff. Sorry I didn't call you. Don't be mad at me. But one of my buddies, Jim Smith, got me and my girl tickets to the game. We saw him play an awful Miami Marlins team. But we got to sit behind the dugout. We got to go in the clubhouse where all the nice stuff is, with the food, the club area. It's insane how pretty beautiful it is. Yeah. Braves done a really nice job with that. But I got to see Michael Harris for the first time. Oh my gosh! I mean, is he another homegrown kid?
He is. As a matter of fact, he's actually homegrown because he's from the Decatur area. His dad was a small-time college baseball player, but a good player. His dad has worked parks. So Michael's been around it for a long time. He's really mature. Chipper Jones was down there last week, and I trust Chipper's eyes. He doesn't need pieces of paper. I trust his eyes. He said, as an outfielder, he's tremendous. But the question with him is, I don't like Ronald Acuna hitting first. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't care. You hit a home run to lead off a game. It's sort of other guys can do that. Is Michael Harris possibly a leadoff hitter? And Ozzie Albies went crazy one day. He was laughing about it, but he said 40-40, which has only been done once this century, 40 homers, 40 steals. Ozzie was like, yeah, I think we got three guys who could do it. Me, Ronald, and Michael Harris. And you sit around and you go, okay, I know it ain't going to happen, but just the idea that a guy said it out loud, a guy who plays the game said it out loud is pretty fascinating. Wow.
Just think about that for a second. I mean, when Acuna came up, he came up my first year when I was at Disney in 2017. My youngest brother follows baseball like I do, but he follows the Astros. God bless him. He loves his Astros. He sent me a note. He goes, hey, listen, he goes, the Braves have a guy who is just a phenom. And I'm like, and I'd heard it, and I'd read all the stuff. I'm there 2 weeks, guys hitting 417, something insane number. I mean, but he's been sort of, a little bit unlucky with the injury bug.
Yeah, getting hit by a pitch or just, going chasing a fly ball and having the knee. So yeah, look, I'm always cautious. He signed a deal, $100 million. You're in the NFL world. I said the minute he signed that deal, and again, $100 million. It's not only $100 million, it's $100 million. Your family is set. But when he has started to look around at Trey Turner and Carlos Rodon and what Juan Soto's going to get and what Manny Machado got, I say he's going to hold out. Like, people in the Braves hate when I say that out loud. Baseball doesn't really have holdouts. Ken Harrelson did it years ago. What's funny? Drysdale and Koufax in '66 held out together to try to get, I think it was $75,000 a piece. They wanted the same deal, and they held out, but it doesn't happen often. That's an NFL thing. That's an Emmitt Smith thing. I think Ronald Acuna is going to look around, and if Juan Soto gets $500 million, Ronald Acuna might have to go pick his head up off the ground and put it on his shoulders to tell the world that I'm actually holding out.
Yeah. I mean, that, signing as early as he did, I think it did sort of create people saying, okay, what's the rush? What are you doing? But again, guys do things for different reasons. I mean, everybody's finances are different. I mean, considering
Ozzie Albies might have I'll call it a worse deal, $35 million. He might have a worse deal than Ronald in terms of value relative to everybody else who does what he does. His deal might be worse than Ronald's at this point.
Who is going to be Atlanta's leadoff hitter this year?
I think it's still Ronald. I think Snit likes it. I think they like the idea that, you got to worry about guy one. I'd rather see him in a little bit more of a run producing spot. Now, what does change is if a guy like Vaughn Grissom does get on base. If you do all of a sudden find yourself saying, oh, my 9-hole guy is getting on base enough, then Ronald Acuna isn't a RBI position. But you need the bottom of the lineup to be good enough, in my opinion, to have Ronald Acuna continue to hit leadoff.
They're real good. They're real good in the middle. They're as good as anybody in baseball in the middle.
Well, Sean Murphy was a great pickup, and he and Travis d'Arnaud, and that's the DH thing. Marcell Ozuna is going to be a key to a lot of this stuff. How many days will Travis d'Arnaud DH? Yeah, Sean Murphy's as good as it gets behind the plate in all of baseball. I love what Ozzie could do. He's a second baseman. He is a guy who will get it out of the glove quick enough to make plays. Not a big arm himself. And then certainly Michael Harris in center field. The fact that he didn't win a Gold Glove last year is it's amazing to me. If there was better than him, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was criminal. Chris, just sort of finishing up with regards to, the money all the big money, and finishing up the thought we were talking about with the Braves. What kind of season do you anticipate for your Braves, schedule-wise? Obviously the injury book is always. What are you looking for? What do you think? How good are they going to be this week? And how much should they worry about the Mets?
Yeah, it's interesting because if the Mets and the Phillies and Harper coming back sooner instead of later will change that. The schedule's different this year, so you're not playing as many games against your division. You're playing everybody in baseball. So at a certain point, if there's the lessers, make sure you take care of the lessers. If Miami, a couple of good starters, but the nights they don't have those guys, take care of them. Washington, take care of them. And now it's teams like Pittsburgh and Kansas City and everybody else who's trying to compete. So the Braves should have advantages some of those nights playing against some American League teams and playing a couple of divisional games fewer than you have in the past. I think they're going to be fine. Do I think it's 101 wins? Probably not. Do I think the Mets win 101? They need their pitching to stay healthy as well. I think it's going to be that 97, 98, 99 dogfight down to the stretch. But here's the good news. You don't have to win a division to actually be the team that plays in a World Series. You just have to line up my pitching, make sure everybody's healthy at the end, and then you can run through an extra playoff series if you have to. Reg, just real quick, two things. At some point, you and I will talk about expansion because the Oakland A's and Tampa are going to be the key to the whole thing. They're going to expand. It's going to happen. Nashville, Montreal, some people keep telling me Charlotte. I don't know if I believe it, but certainly Las Vegas is going to be in, whether it's the A's going to Vegas, whether it's Tampa going to Nashville. It's too much money to not expand to 32 and 16 in each league. When we get together the next time, there's a radical conversation where you start all over again with baseball. Once you get 32 teams. You start all over, and maybe, just maybe, if you want to be radical, the American League and National League thing that we know, it goes away. Maybe the Mets and the Yankees play in the same division. Maybe you actually go full-blown radical, because it does seem like baseball can gain a little bit by doing something different these days. And then also the other big storyline is this Diamond Sports Bally's. And if you know anything about bankruptcy, it's 14 teams that are on this Diamond Sports / Bally network. They're going away. In a handful of days, they're truly declaring bankruptcy. So how the games are shown, who gets them, how much it's going to cost you, that's going to be a game changer in baseball too. And expansion and how the money's handled in that regard, are going to be two stories that I think on a slowish day, once the season gets started, people are really going to start to do deep dives into that stuff.
I'll keep an eye out for that. That's incredible. I like, just to follow up a little bit about on the expansion piece. I like Vegas. I like Nashville. I think the experiment in Tampa. I've thought it for 2 or 3 years. That the experiment in Tampa or in St. Petersburg has been over because I when I'm in town, I've always when I lived in Tampa, I took my kids to see the games over there. The building is awful, Chris. It's awful.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with it. And I keep seeing pretty drawings. They did it in Oakland. They were like, oh, we're going to build a $12 billion complex. And you go, no, you're not. In Tampa, I saw all the pretty pictures. We're going to do it by the water. We're going to do 34,000 seats. We're going to let people walk through it at lunchtime. We're going to set up park benches. I keep hearing all this stuff, and I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not.
You're not. No. It's embarrassing. But I like the expansion piece, the whole blow up the National League, blow up the American League. Can you imagine the Mets and the Yankees in the same league?
Oh, listen, I don't know if it'll happen, but the purity of baseball, if you're going to not do it because of, I'm old, but even I say, well, okay, shifting was a thing. Now it's not anymore. Two times thrown over to first base. What? That's a thing. Pitch clock, hitter's clock. So if baseball is going to go all in, maybe there's a way to actually garner new interest, build up some new rivalries. And I'm not telling you they're going to do it on Front Street because Rob Manfred doesn't do anything. He's missing in action more than he's actually present.
Awful.
But I think Montreal, Portland, I keep hearing about all these other cities. It's Vegas and Nashville with the possibility of Montreal, but dependent upon, like Bryce Harper just said on Sunday, he's from Vegas. He wants Vegas to get an expansion team. He believes like the Golden Knights in hockey, that's the best way to birth a team. It's not somebody else's stuff. It's our stuff. And I'll tell you why Vegas makes sense. It doesn't matter who you root for, especially with the scheduling. I'm doing a 3-day road trip to see my team play in Vegas.
Absolutely.
I just am.
Absolutely. Everybody flocks to Vegas for whatever reason it is. Whether it be the shows, whether it be the gambling, whether it be the golf, whether it be the other stuff that's out there. Everybody goes. You're right. Let me ask you this with regard to, we'll finish up with about the rules. What's been sort of the, now that we've 2 or 3 weeks into the shift, a couple 3 weeks into the pitch clock, the bigger bases, what's sort of been the feeling league-wide about how those changes have been implemented and how they're working?
More singles. They want more baseball. They want it to be sped up, no doubt about it. You can take 8, 10, 12 minutes off a game. Okay, I guess. And, the Braves were involved in a game where 3-2 pitch, bases loaded, the first day of games. Umpire called the guy out. He wasn't looking at the pitcher. He wasn't engaged. The game literally ended on an umpire going strike 3, you're out. And the guy was like, what? So everybody in baseball saw that day one. So that was kind of interesting. But the big thing is more singles. No shifting. They want more guys on base. They want more players action, more singles so far in spring training than we would have seen in the last handful of years. And a single being taken away from guys. So Matt Olson made 80 outs into the shift last year. That was 5th most. Freddie Freeman, the guy he replaced, was 4th with 81. You want guys on base. The no shifting will absolutely give guys a chance to shoot singles more than they have in the last few years.
And that's what they want.
Yes.
Okay.
More action. Right. No doubt.
Hey, man, listen, always great talking to you. I enjoy talking because like I said, you're the baseball guru aficionado. I think we need to sort of talk a little bit more about this. Do a little bit of a deeper dive on the whole expansion. And then the ballast thing will definitely be worth kind of keeping our eye on with regards to
baseball. Baseball might be owning baseball a little bit more than they ever have because they're going to take over these broadcasts.
Wow. Listen, have a great day. Give your lovely wife my best, and we'll talk soon, pal. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much.
All right, man. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too.